Greetings, I'm Amanda Salutu. I'm with my group mates Thabang Banteri, Mbelina Philip, Oteng Bono, Puretile Musi, Taubadi Badi, and Thabang Watsela. We'll be discussing financial scandals, their impact, fundamental principles broken, internal and external factors that brought them up, and the recommendations. Our first scandal will be Marcus Just and Steinhoff share price plunge in 2017. Marcus Just and Steinhoff is a multinational holding company that was formed in 1969, and it was a multinational holding company that inflated its profits by making fictitious transactions to inflate their profits. So the reason why they did this was because they wanted people to see them as a big company that was successful, so that people can buy into their shares and invest into them, because as long as they were seen in that light, everybody was happy and people believed that it was actually booming, while in reality it was broke and it was sinking in debt. So this was orchestrated by the CEO, Marcus Just, who was appointed in 1996 by Bruno Steinhoff. So what happened was, when the scandal was established in 2017 by German nationals, and underneath allegations, they found out that Marcus Just was the entire head of the operations, and he did this without telling the directors and the board of directors. So he was an alone man, and they lost 94% of their prize play, losing 601 billion worth of rent. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Thabang Banteri, and I'll be taking you through the ethical element of the scandal. So there were a few fundamental principles that were breached. The first one was integrity. Marcus Just, the CEO of Steinhoff, was not honest in his business proceedings, and he lied to investors and regulators about the proceedings of the business. The second principle that was breached was objectivity. The CEO was subjective in his thinking and in his way of approaching certain scenarios, and he had a desire to project the company in a false light that wasn't that reality. The third principle that was breached was professional competence. The board on Steinhoff was not competent enough. They were wealthy businessmen who were not competent professionals. Therefore, they could not challenge Marcus in his thinking and his way of approaching certain accounting principles. The last one is professional behavior. Marcus often lashed out at his employees who challenged his authority and who challenged his way of approaching certain scenarios. He knowingly elected incompetent members and did not accept criticism.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Belina Philip, and I'll be discussing the external factors that enabled the scandal. 1. Regulatory environment. South African regulators did not uphold strict accounting standards. As a result, they failed to detect and prevent the fraudulent activities at Steinhoff. Also, the complex international structure of the company made it challenging for the regulators to closely monitor its operations. Secondly, economic conditions. Economic conditions such as the rise of multinational global corporations, low tax rate of around 10 to 15% were fatal conditions that allowed this scandal to germinate and expand over the years before it was being detected. Thirdly, investor sentiments. Investors were attracted to Steinhoff by its rapid growth and high returns, therefore overlooking the potential red flags which could have indicated financial misconduct in the company.
Greetings. My name is Puretile Musi, and I'll be presenting on the internal factors that enabled the scandal. I'll firstly start with corporate governance. The lack of accountability, transparency, and risk management processes allowed him to successfully carry out his fraudulent activities. Corporate culture. He cultivated a culture of secrecy and non-compliance. The employees would be discouraged to speak out against his unethical behaviors, and even if they did, they would be severely punished. Organizational structure. Just's excessive power and centralization of decision-making in the ranking structure of Steinhoff made him go undetected and unchecked. Lastly, I'll talk about competence and technical capabilities. With the magnitude of his power, he was able to hire incompetent board of directors, knowing that he would use the lack of skills and knowledge to go undetected. We can relate that with the social exchange theory, whereby we see that he's using the lack of skills and knowledge while they're benefiting from youth with larger salaries. Thank you.
Greetings, my name is Taubadi and I'll be taking you through the social impacts caused by the scandal. The collapse of the Steinhoff share price and revelations of accounting fraud damaged public trust in big corporations and financial institutions. It fueled public anger over corporate greed and lack of accountability. It resulted in significant losses for small investors and seniors. In relation to the stakeholders theory, which suggests that there should be a relationship between a business, its customers, and the community, which should be respected. An element of this theory was disregarded when Steinhoff risked losing pensioners' money through fraudulent activities.
My name is Otempono and I'll be taking you through the economic impacts caused by the scandal. Firstly, billions of shareholders' wealth and pension funds took a massive hit when the company lost over 90% of its market value. Secondly, increased difficulties for other companies to raise capital as confidence eroded in the South African corporate governance in financial markets. This was made because people became scary of investing in companies that work in the similar field as the Steinhoff company. Thirdly, the increased unemployment. This led to a ripple in the economy, affecting suppliers, contractors, and other businesses connected to Steinhoff.
Greetings. My name is Tapan Watsela. I'll be taking you through the recommendations. By strengthening this aspect, the scandal would have been avoided at an earlier stage and its negative impact would have been mitigated. Point number 2. Large corporates like the Steinhoff should be encouraged to follow the international financial reporting standards because if they are linked to fraud, they may have a huge negative impacts towards the economy. Number 3. Biased decision making should be avoided by including diversity in the executive committees by including different races and including different genders. We have reached the end of our reporting from the Steinhoff. Thank you. Case closed.
We will now discuss the Madoff mayhem that happened in 2008, orchestrated by Benny Madoff, who was a well-respected Wall Street financier and investment advisor. He founded Benny L. Madoff Investments LLC in 1960 to orchestrate the largest Ponzi scheme America has ever seen. He defrauded thousands of Americans and stole billions from them until 2009, where he pled guilty of multiple counts of financial crimes. So what happened was Benny Madoff devised an elaborate Ponzi scheme where he paid old investors with new investors' money instead of the actual profits that were earned from the trades he promised. So he promised and delivered consistently returns of 10 to 12% every time that he made a transaction, regardless of what the financial state of the country was, whether in good times or bad times. The consistency was what brought in investors. So he had investors from banks, hedge funds, and high-profile people who trusted him because of his consistency. So it is estimated that he saw around 65 billion of American investments and money. And the fraud finally collapsed in 2008, where the financial market hit a downfall, and everybody wanted to take out their money from banks because they did not trust them anymore. So that's when people discovered that there were no trades, but instead he was just using Rob's money to pay off Peter.
Continuing in the Madoff scandal by relating it to the fundamental principles. Integrity. Madoff engaged in dishonesty by telling his client that he's investing their money into the money market whilst investing it in a Ponzi scheme. Objectivity. He was subjective. He was subjective in his dealings he was subjective in his role as a financial advisor, as he did that by manipulating the investment data, which was not fair and just. Professional behavior. He was involved in illegal ethics and manipulated his statement, which destroys the finance industry as a whole. Confidentiality. confidentiality. He disclosed sensitive information about his clients, which he perpetuated the Ponzi scheme. Yes, thank you.
I'll be taking you through the internal factors that enable the scandal. Firstly, there is lack of internal control. The firm lacked oversight measures that would enable them to reveal the fraud. Audits, trade confirmations were either missing or fabricated. Secondly, I'm questioning executive team. The LMX theory suggests that the quality of leader-member exchanges plays a critical role in shaping the ethical conduct within an organization. What Benny Madoff did was, he surrounded himself with his family members who did not question his authority. And lastly, tax systems control. Madoff ensured his Ponzi scheme operations were partially off limits in his company systems to avoid exposure.
I'll be continuing with the external factors that enabled the Madoff mayhem. Lack of regulatory scrutiny. The SEC received credible tip-offs and evidence that over the years that should have indicated red flags on Madoff's operations. Secondly, prominent status and finance. Madoff had cultivated an image of respectability and trustworthiness over the years in the financial field. This aura of legitimacy around his firm seemed to have calmed down the regulators and the investors into complacency. Thirdly, strong performance claims. The firm made strong and consistent investment performance claims since he used a strategy which allowed him to generate steady returns of around 10 to 12% regardless of the market conditions. So this convinced the investors not to question Madoff's claimed investment strategies. Lastly, we have weak due diligence by funds. Due diligence involves thoroughly vetting an investment manager's audits, operations, and strategies before committing capital. In Madoff's case, a surprising number of sophisticated funds and wealth managers failed to perform due diligence, but they funneled money to Madoff's scheme without conducting the normal due diligence on his operations.
Greetings. I'll be taking you through the social impacts of the scandal. The scandal brought about long-term psychological effects on its victims. Most victims experience feelings of anger, betrayal, and depression. Some reports have also shown that some victims experienced physical health problems such as high blood pressure and insomnia. The Madoff scheme damaged public trust in financial institutions and the stock market. A lot of charities and non-profit organizations had fallen victim of the Benny Madoff scheme since they had invested money in it and lost it all. Thank you.
I'll be continuing the economic impacts of the scandal. We'll firstly start with financial losses. Many people lost their life savings and retirement funds as a result of the Madoff scheme. This had a devastating impact on individuals and families, and it led to an increased poverty and financial insecurity for many people. Unfortunately, increased poverty makes a country less attractive, and with that, it discourages tourists from other countries to come visit the country, and we depend on that foreign exchange to help boost the economic health. Number two, it led to a decline in the stock market, as investors pulled their money out of the market in response to fraud. As we all know, the stock market is a driving wheel to the economic health. So, as investors' confidence goes down, the economic health goes down with it. Lastly, it contributed to the financial crisis of 2008, as some of the banks that were exposed to the Madoff fraud were already struggling. All these factors combined to create a ripple effect that impacted the company as a whole. During that period, banks were unable to issue out loans to struggling business, and that unfortunately led to their demise, and people resorted to crime ways to help fend themselves. Thank you.
In conclusion of our presentation, I'll be taking you through the recommendations for this specific scheme. So the first recommendation would be to coordinate data sharing across regulatory agencies. What this suggests is that audit firms and regulatory authorities should cooperate more and share more data about these institutions so that they can catch any frauds and deter them. The second recommendation would be diversification of portfolios. What this suggests is that investors should spread their investment over a wide portfolio and different investment instruments so that they don't lose their life savings or funds over one scam. The third recommendation would be to increase resources devoted to investigating tips and conducting spot audits. What this suggests is that more funds and manpower should be delegated by the government and other relevant stakeholders into tackling such frauds and making sure that there's enough manpower to tackle these frauds. The last recommendation would be to provide specialized training to regulators in investigating complex frauds. What this suggests is that the government and other stakeholders should develop special task forces to target fraud. Auditors usually deal with large sets of data and many different institutions, but there are no delegated task forces that are meant to tackle these kinds of frauds. So the government and other stakeholders should take this into consideration and hopefully deter future frauds. Thank you. That will be the end of our presentation.